The rain had followed him for hours, not heavy enough to drive the city indoors, only steady enough to soak the narrow Victorian streets in black reflections and trembling gold from the gas lamps above. Shadowborn walked without direction. His coat hung dark and heavy from the rain, while cold water slipped through strands of wet hair across his face. The city moved around him in fragments, distant carriage wheels, muffled footsteps, the occasional glow behind curtained windows, but none of it held his attention for long, because every thought returned to her. He had left the manor before dusk, convincing himself distance would quiet whatever had begun growing inside him. The silence of the streets should have helped. The endless alleyways, the fog drifting low across stone roads, the cold night air filling his lungs. But instead, she remained, not beside him, worse, inside his thoughts. He passed beneath another gas lamp, slowing slightly as voices echoed from a nearby tavern. Laughter spilled briefly into the street before the door shut again, leaving the night hollow once more. Shadowborn lowered his gaze. His jaw tightened faintly. He could still remember the way she had whispered into the darkness earlier that evening. "Is anybody there?" The sound had followed him for hours now. A quiet human voice that should have meant nothing. And yet something in him had answered before he could stop it. Not aloud, but somewhere deeper. The wind shifted sharply between the buildings. He stopped walking near the mouth of a narrow alley, one hand resting against the cold stone wall beside him. His breathing slowed, though the tension beneath it did not. He should have left days ago, before the watching became waiting, before the silence around her started feeling necessary. A man appeared further down the street, carrying a lantern beneath his coat against the rain. At first he paid Shadowborn little attention. Only another figure standing alone in the dark. Then the stranger looked up fully and froze. For a brief moment, the gold in Shadowborn's eyes surfaced beneath the shadow of wet hair, unnatural, faintly burning in the darkness before fading again. Fear crossed the stranger's face instantly, not confusion, recognition. The man stepped backward without speaking, lowered his gaze, and crossed the street quickly into the fog beyond the lamps. Shadowborn watched him disappear. A hollow feeling settled heavily in his chest. There it was again, the reminder. Whatever had begun between him and Eliza, it did not change what he was. His eyes closed briefly. Rain struck softly against his face. "She should fear me," he murmured quietly into the empty street, but even speaking the words felt dishonest now. Because part of him already knew the truth. If she ever truly looked at him, if she ever stood close enough to see what waited beneath the restraint he fought so carefully to maintain, he did not know whether he would leave again. The cathedral bells rang faintly somewhere deeper in the city. Midnight. Shadowborn finally pushed himself away from the stone wall and continued walking through the sleeping streets. But the further he wandered, the more familiar the roads became, until slowly, almost unconsciously, he realized he had returned to her part of the city once more. The manor stood silent, in the distance, beyond iron gates and bare winter trees. Candlelight still flickered faintly behind one upstairs window. Her room. He remained hidden within the shadows across the street, unmoving beneath the rain, and far above him, unaware he had returned yet again, Eliza stirred softly in her sleep. A quiet breath escaped her lips as she turned slightly beneath the blankets. "Do not leave," she whispered faintly into the darkness. And for the first time that night, Shadowborn could not make himself walk away.